Ladies and gentlemen, there is a moment in life when heaven tries to bless you, but something in your home, something in your habits, something in your spirit keeps blocking the breakthrough meant for you. And tonight, I'm going to expose the silent thief that steals your energy, your clarity, your focus, and your prosperity, often without you even knowing it. Because there is a psalm that destroys the spirit of poverty, and there is a habit that secretly destroys your discipline. When you understand both, you will never live the same again. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will shift the atmosphere of your entire life. Faith has a way of reaching into the unseen and reshaping the atmosphere around you. And when you speak a psalm with conviction, you are not simply reading ancient words, you are activating a spiritual frequency that begins rewriting the emotional and mental script inside your home. Every word spoken in faith becomes a vibration that challenges the old patterns of lack and limitation that have been living in your subconscious for years. As you recite the psalm, you are telling your spirit to rise above fear and scarcity, and you are telling your mind to release the stories that no longer serve you. The psalm becomes a declaration of divine order, entering the places where confusion once lived. It becomes a command that poverty, in all its forms, loses its grip on your environment. The energy of your home shifts, because the energy inside you shifts first. The psalm begins dissolving the invisible residue of doubt that has been lingering in the corners of your heart. And with every repetition, you awaken a new expectation for what your life can become. When you speak a psalm with intention, you are not only communicating with the divine, you are communicating with yourself in a deeper way than most people realize. You are telling your mind that you are no longer available for patterns that sabotage your peace and prosperity. You are telling your emotions that new strength is rising within you. You are telling your spirit that abundance is not a distant dream, but a present reality being formed through your alignment. The psalm becomes a spiritual tool that opens the windows of your inner life, allowing divine light to enter the spaces that have been dimmed by discouragement. It is a cleansing, a renewal, a rebalancing of everything that had slipped out of harmony. Speaking the psalm daily trains your subconscious to release its attachment to struggle. Each word reprograms you to expect provision instead of lack. And as your internal expectation rises, the external world must begin to reflect the new story you are telling. There are moments when poverty is not just a financial condition, but a spiritual heaviness that surrounds the heart, clouding the mind with the belief that nothing will ever change. In those moments, a psalm becomes more than a prayer, it becomes a weapon. It cuts through the fog of hopelessness, reminding you that you are connected to a higher source that has never abandoned you. This spiritual connection begins dissolving the mental chains that kept you stuck in cycles of scarcity. You start to recognize that poverty is not just about money, it is about mindset, identity, and expectation. When the psalm enters your home, it enters your thoughts, and when it enters your thoughts, it dismantles the inner structures that once held you captive. Speaking the psalm realigns you with divine favor, divine timing, and divine supply. It grounds you in the belief that you are supported on all sides, and as you stand in that belief, the emotional weight that once felt unbearable begins to lift. As the psalm resonates through your home, it creates a spiritual atmosphere that cannot coexist with despair. It awakens the energy of gratitude, which is one of the most powerful forces for attracting abundance. Gratitude shifts your inner climate from focusing on what is missing to recognizing what is already present. This shift opens the doorway for more blessings to flow into your life. It trains your mind to seek possibility rather than limitation. It trains your heart to remain hopeful even when circumstances seem unchanged. When the psalm is spoken repeatedly, the vibration of gratitude becomes your home's primary frequency. This frequency draws opportunities, connections, clarity, and favor toward you. It dismantles the heaviness that once made your home feel spiritually stagnant. As gratitude grows, the old patterns of lack begin to lose authority over your decisions. And in that newfound freedom, prosperity begins quietly positioning itself around you. There is a reason spiritual texts emphasize the power of spoken words. Sound carries intention, and intention shapes reality. When you speak a psalm, you are sending out a command that the old energies must leave and the new must enter. You are reminding yourself that you were never designed to live in cycles of financial fear or emotional instability. The psalm becomes a declaration that you are reclaiming the atmosphere of your home, your mind, and your future. Every verse becomes a seed that plants hope into the soil of your subconscious. These seeds grow silently at first, transforming your inner landscape in ways you may not immediately see. Over time, they become new beliefs, new expectations, new behaviors. And those behaviors begin attracting new outcomes. The psalm is not magic, it is alignment. It brings your thoughts, emotions, and intentions into agreement with the truth of abundance. And as alignment deepens, the energy of your home becomes a sanctuary of peace rather than a battlefield of worry. When a psalm is spoken consistently, it begins breaking generational patterns that may have followed your family for years. Poverty is often inherited, not through money, but through belief systems. Families unknowingly pass down fear, scarcity thinking, and emotional instability from one generation to another. Speaking the psalm disrupts that cycle. It announces that the generational story ends with you. It fills the atmosphere with a new narrative rooted in strength, faith, and expectation. This spiritual shift affects the way you handle money, relationships, and decisions. It influences the energy your children grow up around. It teaches your household that abundance is not only possible but natural when aligned with divine truth. The psalm becomes the sound of generational healing, echoing through the walls of your home. It becomes the anthem of a new era where prosperity is no longer a fantasy but a lived experience. And as this new energy solidifies, your home becomes a place where blessings feel at home. Your habits are the architects of your reality, and every small decision you make shapes the atmosphere of prosperity or lack around you, even when you don't realize it. What you repeat daily becomes the blueprint your mind follows, and if those routines drain your energy, your clarity, or your discipline, they silently sabotage the abundance you pray for. Prosperity is not attracted only by desire, but by the vibration created through consistent, aligned behavior. When your habits are chaotic, your results become chaotic. When your habits are intentional, your life becomes intentional. Every choice carries a frequency, and that frequency determines what you draw toward you. The smallest routines become whispers to the universe about what you believe you deserve. When you choose discipline, you declare readiness for increase. When you choose distraction, you declare comfort with being stuck. And the home you build internally becomes the home your external life mirrors. Many people pray for blessings, but continue living with habits that block those blessings from entering, not because they lack desire, but because they lack alignment. The universe responds to consistency, and spiritual laws respond to order, not confusion. When your daily habits support clarity, peace, and intentional action, they amplify the spiritual energy of prosperity already trying to reach you. But when you entertain habits that scatter your focus, weaken your emotional stability, or reduce your self-respect, they dim the inner light that abundance needs to find its way to you. Prosperity is attracted to environments of order, and your personal routine is part of that environment. Even the energy you wake up with is affected by the choices you made the night before. When your routines nurture your mind, strengthen your body, and protect your spirit, they build a foundation strong enough to hold the breakthroughs you seek, and that foundation becomes your personal gateway to increase. Your habits communicate your priorities far louder than your words ever could, and sometimes, the reason prosperity feels distant is because your daily actions are sending mixed signals to your spiritual and mental environment. Habits have a way of shaping how you think, what you believe, and how much control you feel over your own life. When you remain disciplined, you begin to trust yourself, and that self-trust becomes a magnet for confidence and opportunity. When your routines are unstable, your mind slips into confusion, and confusion breeds stagnation. Prosperity cannot flourish in a spirit that doubts itself, and self-doubt often grows from inconsistent behavior. But when you rise each day with intentional practices, prayer, planning, gratitude, cleanliness, and clarity, you send a message to the universe that you are ready for better. And life always responds to the level of preparedness you embody, not the level of desire you express. There is a spiritual truth that many overlook. What you do in private determines what appears in public. Prosperity begins in the unseen spaces, the thoughts you repeat, the behaviors you practice when no one is watching, the boundaries you honor, the energy you allow into your home. Habits that drain your purpose silently build a wall between you and your breakthroughs. Habits that strengthen your purpose create pathways to new opportunities. When you choose discipline over impulse, clarity over confusion, and purpose over temporary comfort, you elevate your spiritual vibration. This elevated state attracts ideas, solutions, and favor that were previously out of reach. Prosperity flows to the version of you who is prepared to steward it wisely. And preparation is built through habits that honor your future instead of indulging your limitations. Every disciplined decision becomes a brick in the foundation of your abundance. Your routines influence the spiritual climate of your home more than any external blessing ever could, because the energy you carry becomes the energy your home carries. If your habits generate peace, your home will reflect peace. If your habits generate chaos, your home will echo chaos. Prosperity cannot thrive in an environment filled with emotional tension, mental clutter, or repeated behaviors that drain your vitality. When you build routines that uplift your spirit, clean spaces, organized thoughts, intentional mornings, reflective evenings, you create a sanctuary where abundance feels welcomed, not resisted. True prosperity is not simply about money, it is about alignment, peace, clarity, and readiness. When your habits support these qualities, your home becomes a magnet for divine increase. And in that sacred environment, breakthroughs find their place naturally. The habits you choose either elevate your self-worth or diminish it. And your level of self-worth determines the level of prosperity you will allow yourself to receive. When you engage in behaviors that weaken your energy or distract your focus, they create cracks in the foundation of your personal power. These cracks may appear small, but over time, they erode motivation, discipline, and spiritual stability. Prosperity requires a version of you who feels worthy of success, and worthiness is strengthened through choices that honor your future. When your habits affirm your identity, your goals, and your spiritual path, they elevate your internal belief system. This internal elevation shifts the energy you project, and that energy begins to draw opportunities toward you. Your habits are not just behavioral patterns. They are declarations of the life you are preparing to live. And when those declarations are strong, prosperity cannot help but respond. There are moments in life when you must pause and examine the habits that quietly drain your mental strength, not because the habit is inherently evil, but because the repetition of anything without awareness begins to weaken your focus. Excessive indulgence in any behavior can create a cycle of distraction that slowly pulls you away from your goals, your clarity, and your purpose. When your mind becomes dependent on temporary comfort, it loses the sharpness required to build a meaningful future. The truth is that every repeated behavior carries a psychological weight, and if that behavior becomes an escape rather than a conscious choice, it begins to take energy that could have been used for growth. You start to feel tired without knowing why, unfocused without realizing the cause, and disconnected from your own potential. When your energy is scattered, your vision becomes foggy. And when your vision is foggy, the path to abundance becomes difficult to see. There is a connection between your emotional discipline and your spiritual strength. And when you constantly seek relief in habits that offer momentary pleasure, you weaken the inner muscle required to maintain consistency in your life. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about protecting your power. When you let impulses govern your decisions, your ability to stay committed to your goals gradually erodes. You begin to lose momentum, not because you lack talent or intelligence, but because your emotional energy becomes diluted. The more you surrender to impulse, the harder it becomes to follow through on your intentions. Emotional clarity requires inner steadiness, and steadiness comes from practicing self-control in the quiet moments when no one else is watching. It is in these private victories that your confidence grows, and confidence is one of the greatest magnets for opportunity. When your choices empower you, your spirit becomes strong. And in that strength, your dreams begin to anchor more firmly. Excessive indulgence in anything, whether scrolling, overeating, or constant self-stimulation, creates a loop in the brain that ties pleasure to avoidance rather than purpose. This loop makes it harder for you to confront your challenges with strength and clarity. When your brain is conditioned to seek quick relief, it becomes less capable of tolerating discomfort, and discomfort is often the gateway to breakthrough. Every major transformation requires pushing through moments of tension, uncertainty, and effort. But when your mind is accustomed to instant escape, it resists those moments and seeks a shortcut instead. This resistance leads to procrastination, scattered focus, and diminished creativity. When your energy is consumed by cycles of escape, it becomes difficult to access the deeper levels of insight and determination needed for success. You begin to feel unmotivated, disconnected, or restless, unaware that your habits are training your mind to avoid the very growth you desire. There is a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you decide to take control of your impulses instead of letting your impulses control you. The moment you pause, breathe, and choose awareness over automatic behavior, you reclaim a piece of your inner authority. This authority strengthens your sense of identity and empowers your spiritual alignment. You begin to realize that your energy is sacred, your focus is valuable, and your mind is capable of extraordinary clarity. As you practice restraint, you notice that your thoughts become sharper, your creativity becomes richer, and your emotional stability becomes stronger. You begin to operate from a place of purpose instead of compulsion. This transformation doesn't happen in one day, but with each conscious choice, you move closer to the strongest version of yourself. And when you stand in that strength, your capacity to attract success naturally expands. Your body, mind, and spirit are interconnected, and when one is drained, the others cannot operate at their full potential. Excessive indulgence can leave you feeling exhausted, mentally foggy, or disconnected spiritually, not because the act itself is destroying you, but because imbalance always leads to emotional depletion. When you invest your energy wisely, you feel more alive, more focused, and more grounded in your decisions. But when your energy is scattered, your habits begin directing you instead of you directing them. Balance is the key, and balance requires mindfulness. When you begin monitoring how much time, thought, and emotional space a behavior occupies, you start to recognize whether it empowers you or weakens you. This awareness becomes the foundation for healthier choices, stronger discipline, and a clearer mind. And in that clarity, your spiritual growth accelerates naturally. When you reclaim your discipline, you reclaim your ability to dream boldly and act courageously. Without discipline, dreams remain fantasies. With discipline, they become plans. Excessive habits often create an invisible ceiling, limiting your ability to rise into the person you are capable of becoming. They steal your mornings, your creativity, your motivation, and your inner fire. When you reduce these habits and redirect that energy into prayer, purpose, planning, or personal development, you start to feel a surge of momentum from within. This momentum is not just emotional, it is spiritual. It is the feeling of returning to yourself, returning to your power, returning to the version of you that is unstoppable. And when you align with that version consistently, abundance begins to respond in ways you never imagined. A prosperous life is not built in a single moment of inspiration. It is crafted through a lifestyle that aligns with the abundance you seek. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you nurture, and every action you repeat contributes to the energy you carry into each day. Prosperity requires harmony between who you are internally and what you are trying to attract externally. Because the universe does not respond to wishes, it responds to alignment. When your habits contradict your prayers, you create an energetic conflict that blocks clarity, opportunities, and breakthroughs. But when your habits support your vision, your life begins to flow with surprising ease. You start to see possibilities where you once saw limitations. You begin to feel empowered where you once felt overwhelmed. And in that empowerment, prosperity finds a place to settle. There is tremendous power in choosing a lifestyle that reflects confidence, gratitude, and intention, because these qualities raise your spiritual vibration to a level where abundance feels natural rather than difficult. Every morning becomes an opportunity to set the tone for the life you want to experience. Whether you begin your day with prayer, meditation, quiet reflection, or purposeful planning, you send a signal to the universe that your life matters and your time matters. This signal invites order instead of confusion, peace instead of chaos, and clarity instead of emotional noise. When you treat your life with reverence, your life responds by opening doors that once seemed closed. Prosperity is not attracted to a rushed, scattered, or careless mindset. It is drawn to a spirit that is balanced, intentional, and receptive. And when your lifestyle embodies these qualities, abundance begins to move toward you effortlessly. Your environment plays a powerful role in shaping your spiritual and emotional state, and when your surroundings reflect order, cleanliness, and peace, they create a fertile atmosphere for prosperity to grow. A cluttered environment creates a cluttered mind, and a cluttered mind repels creativity and clarity. But a tidy, peaceful space refreshes your thoughts and elevates your energy. It becomes easier to think, easier to focus, and easier to remain grateful for what you have while preparing for more. Abundance thrives in spaces where gratitude lives. When your environment becomes a sanctuary rather than a source of stress, your mind naturally shifts into a state of openness and optimism. And in that state, you begin attracting new ideas, new opportunities, and new resources that align with your purpose. A prosperous mindset is not built on external wealth, but on internal stability, because true abundance begins in the heart and expands outward. When you cultivate inner peace, your decisions improve. When you practice emotional discipline, your relationships strengthen. When you embrace gratitude, you transform your perception of life's challenges. These inner qualities become spiritual magnets that draw more good into your life. Prosperity is sustained not by luck but by character, by the consistency of choosing growth over stagnation, gratitude over complaint, and vision over fear. When your lifestyle becomes a reflection of that inner character, abundance becomes a natural byproduct. You no longer chase prosperity, you embody it. And whatever you embody eventually manifests. Your lifestyle choices create ripples that extend far beyond the moment you make them, shaping the direction of your future in ways you may not immediately see. Every healthy decision builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. The more aligned your choices are with your vision, the more empowered you feel to take bold steps. Prosperity requires this kind of boldness, courage to grow, courage to release old patterns, and courage to trust the process even when the results are not yet visible. When you repeatedly choose actions that honor your highest potential, you step into a timeline where abundance becomes the norm rather than the exception. Your future unlocks in proportion to your discipline, your consistency, and your willingness to elevate your lifestyle beyond what feels convenient. A prosperity lifestyle also requires guarding your spirit from influences that weaken your focus, drain your energy, or disrupt your emotional balance. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay, and not every conversation deserves your attention. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is strategic. When you preserve your energy, you preserve your clarity. When you preserve your clarity, you preserve your ability to make decisions that lead to expansion. Prosperity cannot flourish in a heart weighed down by negativity, comparison, or emotional chaos. It flourishes in hearts that are light, open, and anchored in purpose. When you choose to surround yourself with uplifting environments, supportive people, and empowering routines, you build the spiritual strength necessary to sustain abundance once it arrives. When your lifestyle aligns with prosperity through discipline, gratitude, clarity, purity, and intentional action, you step into a version of yourself capable of holding the blessings you once only dreamed about. You become a vessel strong enough to carry increase, wise enough to manage it, and grounded enough to multiply it. Your life becomes a reflection of spiritual order rather than internal conflict. Your home becomes a place where peace reigns, where faith is alive, and where abundance feels welcome. And when abundance feels welcome, it does not hesitate to stay.